anything that would harm the NHS. She has worked her socks off drawing up that bill with a lawyer, a barrister, Peter Roderick, and a lot of advice from other people. And that is the best that they can do. Now, for me, we shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of the good, and that's what keeps happening at the moment. People will quibble about small things, and there are people involved in NHS campaigning who will not get on board because every single thing does not suit them. You probably recognise this from your own organisations. We have got a massive fight on our hands at the moment to stop the sell-off and break-up of the NHS. Particularly, we haven't even talked about TTIP, and I don't want to go there. I take your point, but the alternative to not centralising PFI debts is to leave each trust to fight their own debt, and we are up against mega corporations who are absolutely ruthless. The only way that the PFI debts, which are crippling hospitals, can be dealt with is to make it a national problem. They cannot be left down to local hospitals. So that's something to sort out after the election. I do not think that we should not back the NHS reinstatement bill because there are one or two things in it that people have misinterpreted in different ways. If we do that, the bad guys will win. There's no question about it in my mind. Everybody's got to get behind that bill. I mean, we can talk about it afterwards. I know what you're saying, but the message should go out, get behind that bill.
I mean, it was kind of a similar question, and I'm not sure whether I don't know whether you're the person to ask about the specifics, but all I remember from Lucy Reynolds' speech, which was very worrying, and and I know she's an academic, and I assume from the look on your face that maybe you have some issues with her, but the detail that she gave seemed to be quite compelling, and the picture was that in practice what it will represent is a massive giveaway to the city, but on a sort of monopoly basis almost, so that and United Health, she suggested, stands to benefit potentially from this enormously, and so you'd almost end up with a private monopoly instead of a marketplace. Or so could you comment on that? Because I actually agree that we shouldn't sort of get overly divided, but equally we can't get behind something if there is a genuine sense in which it is going to turn out to be a Trojan horse in the end.
I can only tell you what I've said already. I completely trust the people who are behind this bill. There are people who will not agree with every bit of it. You just named one of them, but unfortunately they don't really have any alternative to what we do at the moment. We need a plan. This is the only plan, is the bill. The classic fate of the progressives is to fall to fighting amongst themselves over small things when we should be all facing outwards against the big things. So nothing's going to happen about the PFI thing quickly, and it would be even a huge victory if we could get whoever won the election to agree that PFI was a bad thing. I mean, that's the kind of situation we're in at the moment. It's that bad. What we do about it once we've agreed it's a bad thing, in order to rescue these hospitals, which are drowning in PFI at the moment. I mean, Barts is just a basket case through PFI. So let's just keep it really simple. Let's say PFI has been very, very bad for the NHS. Millions and squillions of pounds wasted. We're getting, for those who don't know, I think we're getting £11 billion worth of infrastructure, and we're going to pay £70 billion for it. But please don't let's fall out over the small details. And there are some people who have got a lot of influence who have got no solutions to their problems at the moment, let's say.
Could we not have amendments to the bill? I mean, declare the PFI debts odious or something like that? I mean, they seem like classic odious debts. In that they should, if you look at them seriously.
George, because other people with their hands up.
I'm sorry, I was just
going to chip in with if people are confused by PFI. I'm not sure everyone knows what PFI is, so probably losing half people in this circle. But if you want to find out more about what PFI is, there's a walking tour at 6 tomorrow, so that'll clear up any questions you got about that. And then we'll be all on the same page, so then we'll know how bad PFI is.
Tell them what
Private Finance Initiative. It's the private sector saying we'll do everything that we'll pay for the investment up front, and basically that means that then the taxpayer is paying a huge bill with lots of huge amounts, interest rate, and so the taxpayer is burdened with a huge bill when the government can actually borrow much cheaper to make these investments to build these hospitals and schools in the first place. So, and there's other scandals around these things, but they're very secretive, and they're off the books, and yeah, it's a big mess. But Tom wanted to speak, and then I don't know your name, but
me as well. And me as well. Phil, you saw me.
Yeah, she had her
yeah, no, and me as well.
Thank you. Can we please get behind the speaker on the NHS reinstatement bill? It's only a bill. Now, I'm not a specialist in this area, but as far as I can gather, it's the best thing that's on offer. It's the only thing which is actually seriously proposing bringing the NHS back into the public sector and making it publicly run and controlled. The effort bill doesn't do that. It doesn't go far enough. And if it's got, as far as I'm concerned also, if it's got Alison Pollock behind it, then that's good enough for me, because I know for years I've known how good she was, and she was on her own for a long time, fighting a very brave and principled campaign. If there are things wrong with it, and maybe there are, okay, it's only a bill, they can be amended as it goes through Parliament. There will be others proposing other amendments trying to wreck it, and they should be fought off. But if there are things which could be improved, okay, so let it be approved as it goes through Parliament. But let's support the principle of it and not start to fight stupid little squabbles about it now, before it even has a chance.
Might have been talking about the EPIC bill, by the way.
George!
You're talking about TTIP and about the NHS being sold off, but I just wanted to ask about the relationship between the NHS and the pharmaceutical industry. And hasn't the NHS already been sort of sold off to pharmaceutical companies? And what do you think about that?
And I'm an experiment as well.
That wasn't my chapter in the book, so it's not an area in which I've got a great deal of expertise. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of arguments about the pharmaceutical industry, but they have traditionally been a problem. And that's a very long-standing. I'm not competing with privatised Big Ben, they probably have already. Yeah, sorry, there are a lot of problems with the pharmaceutical industry, but that has been kind of parallel to the NHS. What's happening at the moment is we're seeing the delivery of NHS care, the actual care of patients, hived off to the private sector. And if you look in The Guardian today, for instance, I'm quoted in a very good article in there about what they describe as a land grab, which is that they have now, you know, Cameron said he was going to give the money and the power to the GPs. Well, of course, the GPs, in order to buy care for their patients, this isn't an answer to your question, but it's something I forgot to say. This is the pharmaceutical thing is aside from this. Cameron and Lanty said they were going to give the money and the power to the GPs to buy care, but most GPs actually don't have the expertise, they don't have the time, and they don't have the interest. So they passed it over to people who are called commissioners. The language of this stuff is fabulous. It's also nerdy that everybody falls asleep as soon as you start talking about it. So, but you will hear about commissioning. Buying care is commissioning, and that's what the GPs were meant to do. And they now have commissioning support units to help them buy that care. And guess who's bidding to run the commissioning support units? It's all in the Observer today. It's the same companies who are bidding to run the NHS, to deliver the care. So it's people like Serco, McKinsey, Ernst & Young, the Big Four, and all the rest of it are bidding to help the GPs buy the care that they are going to supply. So if you look at my quote in the Observer, they've put Dracula in charge of the blood bank because they've given the money to the private sector to buy care from the private sector. And that's how bad it is in the NHS. So I can't really answer your question because I don't know enough about the pharmaceutical industry, but I think we can fight the pharmaceutical problems as a different issue while recognising that the NHS is in real peril at the moment. And I think, in my mind, I'm trying to keep things apart. I thank you for your intervention over here, and I'll speak to our colleague over here afterwards because you know, we're in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater with that bill. It's immensely important, and if people start quibbling about small points and returns afterwards, we do ourselves more harm than good, I'm afraid.
Okay, can I skip in first? And then I was going to say that the theme of today was kind of twofold. It was, on the one hand, party funding, on the other hand it was lobbying, and as far as lobbying and the NHS goes, no, actually this actually relates to tomorrow's theme, which is the vested interests of our parliamentarians. Just to mention that there's quite a famous now social investigations report or study or whatever you want to call it, that found that over 200 parliamentarians that were set to benefit from from privatisation of the NHS one way or another.
Yeah, corruption.
So that's important to know. The other part of this picture, which is kind of important, which would be nice to know a bit more of, but I don't know if you can speak to it at all, is about the lobbying that's gone on in order to make this NHS privatisation move forward.
Well, I didn't write that chapter in the book either. It was written by Tamsin. It's a bloody good chapter too. It's absolutely shocking. It's the last chapter in the book about the health corporations. And she took me, as I said, on a lobbying tour of Westminster and stopped outside and they're all laying, you know, guess where all these guys are? They're within half a mile of Parliament. And it showed me all these people who are called innocuous things like the policy group and all the rest of it, who are absolutely captured by corporations and who have been in there lobbying like crazy. I wrote an article when Obamacare first was being fought. I wrote an article about it for somebody over here and discovered that the private, the medical industrial complex, because that's really what they are now, the medical industrial complex in the US has spent $1 million a day lobbying against Obamacare. So go figure how much money they're making out of healthcare if they're prepared to spend $1 million a day. And I wouldn't be at all surprised. So Tamsin will be able to tell you, because she wrote the chapter and she's speaking next. So you could ask her that question and I'm sure she will give you the answer. But there are huge forces arrayed against us, there's no question, because the money that they can make out of this is huge. And there's absolutely no evidence. I was trying to think about writing this book. There is no evidence that what is happening benefits patients. All the evidence shows that it is absolutely against the interests of patients. And you know, if I thought this would be for patients, I'd go home and read a novel. But it bloody well isn't. It's dreadful for patients, and that's all we care about. So the lobbying industry, of course they're in there, because how else are you going to sell? If you don't know, Tamsin might bring her book, but she wrote a fantastic book called A Quiet Voice. A Quiet Word, thank you, about the lobbying industry. And if you don't want to write the book, go and Google her article in G2, The Guardian, when the book came out. You know, 10 ways the lobbying industry sell you completely unsavoury ideas, and one of them was they infiltrate all the think tanks. So you know, everything we hear has been passed through their sieve. That's why social media is so important. I do the tweeting for Keep Our NHS Public. We rely on social media to bypass all that filtration. Right. Anyway, I'm sure you've heard enough from me now. Thank you.
Right, Phil.